foster safety.
Yep, that's right. Brother R.A. at CCTV, just a little tardy-ish, and we're gonna have to make do with what I got. Cause, yeah, I'm late as I don't know what. But yeah, enjoy that outside view for a second, and we are going to read today, and I guess work on my reading, because I didn't like the way last week's show came out. The audio for reading, my cadence was off or something, and so we're gonna work on that. I'm gonna practice with you, if you don't mind, and let's see if we're gonna make things happen the way they need to happen. Okay, I'm looking to bring up some pictures for you too. Yeah, because I'm going to be reading a couple of different things that are of importance in understanding who we is. You know, this is the Tell Me Who I Am series. And here, I'll give you a different shot. You can look at this shot. I'm still trying to pull myself together. Yeah, and pulling all of this together. Yeah, just trying to make it all come alive. So, things that I wish to read, notes, since we're going into Black Hour Story Month, and yeah, I have to learn to relax more. I can't always be agitated and angst, and that's what the Tai Chi is for Brother R.A., to reach a higher level of relaxation within self. Do you take time for yourself to relax? Do you tap into all aspects of who you are? You see, I have the target bag. Now, do you stay in the peripheral circle? Do you even enter in any aspect of yourself? Oh, did I show you this already? You know you are watching BrotherRA.com. I am your host, Brother R.A., on Unsurpassable Justice. Reaching justice that is unsurpassable. And in reaching that justice that's unsurpassable, do you deal with the various levels of who you are? Have you even begun the process of coming in and you only have that little bit left to accumulate inside yourself? Are you reaching deep, deep within any aspects of that? Did you at least get this far into yourself in searching? So then you can become that lollipop, you know, that spine comes straight up into the full 360 degrees or 365, you know, going deep. And not only just 365 days in a year? Is that a coincidence? Do you get this deep into your core as a melanin dominant individual? I, as a black man, am seeking to cover all aspects of my divinity and reach. No, I don't wish to be half-baked or half-done, but reach all aspects of who I am. And since I wish to deal with Du Bois again, here, let me show you this real quick. The little tour that I did last week in front of his house. And yeah, that'll give me a minute and 30 seconds to try to pull some other stuff together. But here, take a quickie look at this. Here we are, Brother R.A., down the street from W.E.B.Du Bois' house that when he went to Harvard. Up, there we go. Look at Flag Street. What is that? The Charles River, almost frozen, the bridge. We'll go around. Hey, how about if we just take the whole peripheral view? How old are these trees? Oh, Harvard dorms. That the black man couldn't stay in. But how old are they? Yeah, well, let's look at the trees. How old are the trees? Who planted the trees? Yeah. Oh, wow. What is all of that? Oh, wait a minute. Is that a biogenetic engineering firm? Amgen, Biogen, Genzyme, Pfizer, something or other? Oh, wow. Okay. All right here. And as the sun sets, thank you for allowing me to be a child of the sun and see what the fuck is going on in my life. Ooh, did I say that on air? Ha ha ha. There you go, Flag Street. Here we are, Brother R.A. Okay, so let's come back to me. And for me, it's important to acknowledge all aspects of my humanity. As I showed you the Target bag, and as I practice my meditation and movement, learning to be light as a feather, and yes, I need to reach balanced life. And yes, this is the male, the stem going into the female, or the straight line and the circle. And when they unite, these are either the umbilical cords or the fallopian tubes, but that's how all humanity got here on the face of the planet Earth. And no, the start of this series, Tell Me Who I Am, I've progressed to understanding what the feather means and being light. Around the universe. Each posture in Tai Chi has a healing significance to a kidney, liver, heart, lung, spleen, all aspects of the organs of your body, and it can be used as a self-defense. And under the tutelage of Master Heej at the Roxbury Tai Chi Academy, along with all of my melanin dominant history or all of my melanin dominant hour story as we get ready to go into our story month. And no, I didn't bring that calendar today. I was a little tardy. So I just wish to, I think I will start with some of the hidden history and then move into W.E.B.Du Bois, because Du Bois, I really appreciate what he had to say, and I do believe that Du Bois and King, even though in different centuries, because Du Bois was late 1800s and King was during the 50s and 60s, 1950s, 1960s. So both black men, including this black man, on a path to search within self. And I am understanding that I can't blame my children for the condition I'm in as Father Nature. Let me just go ahead and okay, hidden history. I'll just go to page 60 since there's certain things happening in the political world. And page 60. Here, let's go to this particular shot, and if I can show you some of the picture, and now I will read that to you about what you just saw. The Great Walls of Massachusetts. Somebody wants to build a wall, okay. I can't blame my melanin recessive inbred mutant child with the calcified pineal gland. Their spiritual gateway is closed. So there's an individual that wishes to build a wall, which is consistent with the hidden history of Massachusetts. The Great Walls of Massachusetts, hard evidence of black slavery in the Bay State. A drive along the byways of the Bay State reveals a ubiquitous presence of ancient stone walls stretching deep into and around the wooded landscape. Walls that have no apparent function today, but centuries ago marked and divided the land, harnessed livestock, or warning off trespassers, are the most permanent and lasting reminder of New England's colonial past. The sheer amount of labor necessary for the erection of these walls is remarkable to consider. In 1850, Henry David Thoreau tried to fathom such a feat. We are never prepared to believe that our ancestors lifted large stones or built thick walls. It suggests an energy and force of which we have no memorials. Leave them chocolate chip cookies alone, R.A. That chocolate's bad for your melanin-dominant ass, sucking snot on air. Forgive me, audience, please. Yes, so as I'm saying about the Great Walls of Massachusetts, This is because Thoreau's ancestors forced the Africans and Indians they enslaved to do this extraordinary, back-breaking work. Massachusetts dignitary Robert Rantoul was more direct. Many of the substantial stone fences marking the boundaries of early New England homesteads are the handiwork of slaves. Even in the most remote sections of Massachusetts wilderness, our black ancestors were forced to erect these stone walls, hewing stones from glacial debris, transporting the huge stones over wilderness trails, and fashioning them into rock barriers at a white man's command. They remain today as a testament to the presence of the black man and the grueling labor he performed. Even historians attempted to minimize or ignore the legacy of black African slavery in Massachusetts. The clear and obvious evidence can be seen almost every rural byway etching plainly in stone. I'm going to show you the two pictures, but here are the, this wall is one of many in Belchertown. Pomp's Wall still stands today on Grove Street in Medford. It was built by an African man held in bondage by one of the most prominent white men in town. Slaveholders often name their African property after characters in Greek and Roman mythology. What other pages do I need to read? Page 20, 25, let's see if I wish to still share that. I know reading Du Bois' stuff, he listed a lot of names, and yeah, the names, do we still have slaveholders' names? Since we're talking about back-breaking work and so on and so forth, and what happens to the black man 18 minutes in. Official seal of Massachusetts depicting the ludicrous scene of an Indian asking the European marauders, M-A-R-A-U-D-E-R-S, to come over and help us. You all see that? Is that clear enough for you? I don't think I wish to read all of Deer Island. I read the Africans in Bay State before, and oh yeah, here goes some good stuff before we get into W.E.B.Du Bois, the black man. A Negro student at Harvard at the end of the 19th century. We read 2 of his pages last week, and we'll go into more of his stuff, but right now I'm going to read. Charles W. Eliot said, "Slave ships owned by Massachusetts white men. It was a war waged by white men for 2 centuries against human nature. Charles W. Eliot. Every type of vessel built in Massachusetts was outfitted to move black flesh through the white markets. Is this coming across clear? Am I making myself plain as we get ready to observe who beat Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs? Oh, that's right. It was a New England Patriot. And that game is this weekend? Let me continue. Let me repeat that just for clarity. Every type of vessel built in Massachusetts was outfitted to move black flesh through the white markets. 3 feet, 10 inches was all that was allowed each captured African in the compact holds of Massachusetts ships. Later, the space was reduced by 7 inches to encase even more black bodies. In 1759, the ship Susie was bought in Boston for 568 pounds. By comparison, one black man at this time could bring 200 pounds or more at auction. A cargo of 30 live African men and a cargo often amounted to several hundred humans could generate enough revenue to buy 10 ships. By the 1800s, a single voyage could generate $500,000 for a white slave merchant. Not only that, the vast plantations in the Caribbean could not have operated without the regular renunciation from the Boston trade in fish, meat, rum, bread, and wood. Did I say that right? That's resuscitation. RESUSCITATION. Yeah. Regular resuscitation from the Boston trade in fish, meat, rum, bread, and wood. By 1772, 63% of New England's exports were to the slavery entrenched West Indies. The slave trade only slowed at the outbreak of the Revolutionary War between Britain and her rebel colonists. But it picked up after the conflict with even greater volume and with little public outrage, no official resistance. Massachusetts companies insured the vessels and took part in the financial bonanza. Ships were sent to Africa to supply the black slaves to the south, as well as to Havana, Nashua, St. Thomas, and the various South American markets. coastal ships owned by Massachusetts men fueled the domestic slave trade by ferrying 50,000 blacks between the slave states annually. The danger of pirates and intermittent warfare between various European governments failed to discourage the traffic in the slaves. After the Dutch and English got out of the business, New England was left as the chief trading area of the Western world. Wherever it was outlawed, the traders simply began to smuggle. Even after the United States outlawed the transatlantic slave trade in 1808, so as not to compete with their lucrative slave breeding trade, New England slave merchants could not have cared less and continued to engage in the international trade in black slaves. I'm going to show you a little picky. If y'all can see, does that come in focus enough? Look at the top level and how they layered the niggers. Can you see that? They layered niggers on a shelf. And then I'm like, And this is Massachusetts. And Massachusetts didn't have any involvement in the slave trade. No, we repudiate the slave trade. But we'll make the ships. You can transport your niggers that way. And we'll make money off of that. The caption for such the picture says, well thought out cargo plan for encasement, confine, stowage, and enslavement of African men, women, and children who spent months chained in the holds of Massachusetts-made ships. The bondage hardware, chains, shackles, handcuffs, and leg irons was also made and installed by Massachusetts white men. And of course, these ships were financed and insured by Massachusetts white men. No love lost. Just my melanin recessive inbred mutant albino with the calcified pineal gland children thinking they need to rule, control, and dominate all humans. Is there some resentment by them towards me? Because I have a spiritual gateway to tap into all aspects of my divinity? One such hidden history of Massachusetts, one such Massachusetts slave owner was Timothy Fitch of Medford. I'm sorry, I had that damn dairy sucking snot. Forgive her, brother. I hear me. I know better. One such Massachusetts slave ship owner as Timothy Fitch of Medford, he ordered his captain, Peter Gwen, to follow strict guidelines in procuring African-based on height and gave advice on treating illness, avoiding mutiny among the captives, as well as tips on enhancing the merchandise for auction time. You are not to take any children, especially girls, if you can avoid it by any means. As few women as possible, but as many prime young men, boys, as you can get from 14 to 20 years of age. Take no slave on board that has the least defect, as you will be early have to choice well assorted good cargo. Make no doubt you'll be able to pick your slaves. I'd rather you would be 2 months longer on the coast than to bring off such a cargo as your last, which were very small and the meanest cargo I've ever had come. Fitch's records show that in August 1759, he became a mass murderer when 26 Africans out of his initial cargo of 138 men, boys, women, and girls, and 1 child were killed during a voyage to the West Indies. Undaunted, Fitch was still in business 5 years later, offering tips on maximizing auction returns. If you have any very old gray super nuded men or women, keep them close shaved head and face every day, well oiled up, and make all of your slaves look as slick well as possible before they go on shore. Likewise, Benjamin Coleman of Boston received an unwelcome letter from his employee in January 1750. I am now to inform you, and with inexpressible grief, that he, Coleman's captain, was under sail for St. Kitts with only 43 slaves out of 113, all the rest being dead. The inexpressible grief was due to the loss of valuable merchandise. Here is a list of Massachusetts vessels known to have engaged in this fiendish enterprise. Many, many more undocumented Massachusetts slave ships were engaged in smuggling to avoid the laws and taxes. Many others still were lost at sea or supposedly excised from the historical record. The task of tracking the commerce of these human flesh dealers with their facilities for operating stealthily as has been as intricate and complicated a task as tracking the movements of the devil himself. Amity, Blossom, Charming Betty, Charming Molly, Charming Phyllis. Oh, and he goes on. Willing Quaker, William Union, Three Brothers, Mermaid, Nightingale, Rachel, Hope. These are the names of the slave ships. Okay, so the hidden history of Massachusetts. Time flies, not my friend. Let's move into, I'm just going to go ahead and start with, I know I read page 1, and I'm going to start halfway back so there's some overlap, so there's some continuity. And he's talking about his room. I wrote about this abode at the time. He's talking about 1890 something. And my room is for a college man's abode, very ordinary indeed. It is quite pleasantly situated second floor front with a bay window and one other window. I'm just gonna go back and show you the pictures of his house real quick so you have understanding and continuity. And as you enter, you will perceive the bed in the opposite corner, small and decorated with floral designs calculated to puzzle a botanist. On the left hand is a bureau with a mirror of doubtful accuracy. In front of the bay window, a stand with 3 shelves of books, and on the left of the bureau is an improvised bookcase made of unpainted boards and uprights containing most of my library, which I am growing quite proud. Over the heat register near the door is a mantle with a plaster of Paris pug dog and a calendar and the usual array of odds and ends. On the wall are a few quite ordinary pictures. In this commonplace den, I am quite content. Following the attitudes which I have adopted in the South, I sought no friendship among my white fellow students, nor even acquaintanceships. Of course I wanted friends, but I could not seek them. My class was large, some 300 students. I doubt if I knew a dozen of them. I did not seek them, and naturally they did not seek me. I made no attempt to contribute to college periodicals, since the editors were not interested in my major interests. But I did have good singing voice, and I loved music, so I entered competition for the Glee Club. I ought to have known that Harvard could not afford to have a Negro in its Glee Club traveling about the country. Quite naturally, I was rejected. I was happy at Harvard, but for unusual reasons. One of these was my absence of racial segregation. I had gone from Great Barrington High School directly to Harvard. I would have sought companionship with my white fellows and been disappointed and embittered by a discovery of social limitation to which I had not been used to. But I have by come way of Fisk and the South, and there I accepted color caste and embraced eagerly the companionship of those of my own color. This was, of course, no final solution. Eventually, in mass assault, led by culture, we Negroes were going to break down the boundaries of race, but at the present, we were band together in a great crusade, and happily so. Indeed, I suspect that the prospect of unlimited full human intercourse, without reservation and annoying distinctions, made me all too willing to consort with my own and to disdain and forget as far as way possible that outer, whiter world. So let's see if we can show you another picture of black man in his who is actually writing this information. This is W.E.B.Du Bois, and here, let's show you what's in front of his house at 20 Flag Street. All right, so where am I? In general, I asked nothing of Harvard but the tutelage of teachers and the freedom of the laboratory and library. I was quite voluntarily and willingly outside its social life. I sought only contacts with white teachers. As I lay directly in the line of my work, I joined certain clubs, like the Philosophical Club. I was a member of Foxcroft Dining Club because it was cheap. James and one or two other teachers had me at their homes at meal and reception. I escorted colored girls to various gatherings, as pretty ones as I could find, to Vesper exercises, and later to class day and commencement social functions. Naturally, we attracted attention, and the Crimson noted my girlfriends. Sometimes the shadow of insult fell, as when at one reception a white woman seemed determined to mistake me for a waiter. In general, I was encased in a completely colored world, self-sufficient and provincial, and ignoring just as far as possible the white world, which conditioned it. This was self-protective coloration, with perhaps an inferiority complex, but with the belief and the ability and future of black folks. My friends and companions were drawn mainly from the colored students of Harvard and neighboring institutions, the colored folks of Boston and surrounding towns. With them, I led a happy and inspiring life. There were among them many educated, well-to-do folks, many young people studying or planning to study, many charming young women. We met and ate, danced and argued, and planned a new world. Towards whites, I was not arrogant. I was simply not obsequious. And to the white Harvard students of my day, a Negro student who did not seek recognition was trying to be more than a Negro. The same Harvard man had much the same attitude towards Jews and Irishmen. I was, however, exceptional among Negroes at Harvard in my ideas on voluntary race segregation. They, for the most part, saw salvation and integration at the earliest moment on almost any terms in white culture. I was firm in my criticism of white folk and in my dream of self-sufficient Negro culture, even in America. This cutting of myself off from my white fellows was being cut off, did not mean unhappiness or resentment. I was in my early manhood, unusually full of high spirits and humor. I thoroughly enjoyed life. I was conscious of the understanding and power, and conceited enough to still imagine, as in high school, that they who did not know me were the losers, not I. On the other hand, I do not think that my white classmates found me personally objectionable. I was clean, not well dressed, but decently clothed. Manners I regarded as more or less superfluous, and deliberately cultivated a certain brusquerie, Brusquerie. You sound it out. I don't speak English or King. I speak colonizers, whatever you want to call this, but here. I speak this. Manners I regarded as more or less superfluous, and deliberately cultivated a certain brusquerie. Personal adornment I regarded as pleasant but not important. I was in Harvard, but not of it, and realized all the irony of my singing. Fair Harvard. I sang it because I liked the music, not from any pride in the Pilgrims. With my colored friends, I carried on lively social intercourse, but necessarily one which involved little expenditure of money. I called at their homes and ate at their tables. We danced at private parties. We went on excursions down the bay. Once, with a group of colored students gathered from surrounding institutions, we gave Aristophane the Birds in Boston Colored Church. The rendition was good, but not outstanding, not quite appreciated by the colored audience, but well worth doing, even though it worked me near to death. I was proud of it. Thus, the group of professional men, students, white-collar workers, and upper servants, whose common bond was color of skin in themselves or in their fathers, together with a common history and current experiences of discrimination, formed a unit that, like many tens of thousands of like units across the nation, had or were getting to have a common culture pattern which made them an interlocking mass, so that increasingly a colored person in Boston was more neighbor to a colored person in Chicago than a white person across the street. Mrs. Ruffin of Charles Street, Boston, and her daughter Bertie were often hostesses to this colored group. She was widowed of the first colored judge appointed in Massachusetts, an aristocratic lady with olive skin and high-piled masses of white hair. Once a Boston lady said to Mrs. Ruffin, ingratiatingly, "I've always been interested in your race." Miss Ruffin flared, "Which race?" She began a national organization of colored women and published the Current, a type of small colored weekly paper which was spreading over the nation. In this, I published many of my Harvard Daily themes. Naturally, in this close group, there grew up among a young friendship ending in marriages. I myself, outgrowing the youthful attractions of Fisk, began serious dreams of love and marriage. There were, however, still my study plans to hold me back. And there were curious other reasons. For instance, it happened that two of the girls whom I particularly liked had what was to me an insuperable handicap of looking like whites, while they had enough black ancestry to make them Negroes in America. I could not let the world even imagine that I had married a white wife. W.E.B.Du Bois, 1890s or so. Is there a date on this? He just says a Negro student at Harvard at the end of the 19th century, 1890 something. Okay, so I could not let the world even imagine that I had married a white wife. Yet these girls were intelligent and companionable. I went to Vassar College, which then refused entrance to Negroes. Years later, when I went there to lecture, I remember disagreeing violently with a teacher who thought the girl ought to have deceived the college by graduating before it knew of her Negro descent. Another favorite of mine was Deanie Pindo. She was a fine, forthright woman, blonde, blue-eyed, and fragile. In the end, I had no chance to choose her, for she married Monroe Trotter. Trotter was the son of a well-to-do colored father and entered Harvard in my first year in the graduate school. He was thick-set, yellow, with close-cut dark hair. He was stubborn and straight-laced and an influential member of his class. He organized the first total abstinence club in the yard. I came to know him and joined the company when he and other colored students took a trip to Amherst to see our friends Forbes and Lewis graduate in the class with Calvin Coolidge. Lewis afterward entered Harvard Law School and became the celebrated center, Rush, of the Harvard football team. He married the beautiful Bessie Baker, who had been with us on that Amherst trip. Forbes, a brilliant, cynical dark man, later joined with Trotter in publishing The Guardian, the first Negro paper to attack Booker T. Washington openly. Washington's friends restored by sending Trotter to jail when he dared to heckle Washington in a public Boston meeting on his political views. I was not present, nor privy to this occurrence, but the unfairness of the jail sentence led me to eventually form the Niagara Movement, which later became the NAACP. Thus, I lived near to life, love, and tragedy. And when I met Marty Cooney, I became doubly interested. She was tall, imperious brunette with gold bronze skin, brilliant eyes, and coils of black hair, daughter of collector of customs in Galveston, Texas. She had come to study music and was a skilled performer. When the New England Conservatory of Music tried to Jim Crow her in the dormitory, we students rushed to her defense, and we won. I fell deeply in love with her, and we were engaged. Thus, it is clear how in the general social intercourse on campus, I consciously missed nothing. Some white students made themselves known to me, and a very few, became lifelong friends. Most of my classmates I knew neither by sight nor name. Among them, many made their mark in life. Norman Hapgood, Robert Herrick, Hubert Crowley, George Dorsey, Homer Folks, Augustus Hand, James Brown Scott, and others. I knew none of these intimately. For the most part, I do not doubt that I was voted a somewhat selfish and self-centered grind with a chip on my shoulder and a sharp tongue. Ha! Am I reading it? Did I write this? Yo, I'm on page